The galaxy believed humans were weak, not because they lacked weapons, not because they lacked intelligence, but because humans felt too much. Other species said emotions made humans slow, foolish, and fragile. They said a human would hesitate when logic demanded abandonment. They said a human would choose mercy over survival. On the broken moon of Karseth, those beliefs were about to be tested. The battle was over. Silence lay heavy across the ruined landscape, broken only by distant metal fires and the slow hiss of leaking fuel. Alien ships burned like dying stars. Bodies, human and non-human, lay scattered across the black dust. No rescue signal answered back. Lieutenant Aaron Halley stood alone. His exoskeleton was cracked, sparking softly, its metal frame bent from explosions and hard landings. Warning lights blinked across his visor, red and angry. Inside the suit, Aaron was bleeding. In his arms, wrapped tightly against his chest, was Cerisa Violaine. She was small compared to him. Her silver-blue skin was torn and darkened with blood. One of her long limbs hung unnaturally still. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, and getting worse with every passing minute. Cerise was not human. She was a field medic from a peaceful species. Thin bones, weak muscles designed for healing, not war. She should never have been on a battlefield like this. Her glowing eyes slowly opened. She looked up at Aaron's helmet. Human, she whispered, her voice shaking. Put me down. Aaron adjusted his grip and said nothing. Please, she said again. You are injured. Your suit is damaged. I can see the warnings. He looked down at her, then back toward the horizon. Nothing but smoke and dead ground. There's a medical station 6 kilometers east, he said calmly. I'm taking you there. Cerise let out a weak, broken sound that might have been a laugh or a cry. You won't make it, she said. Your exoskeleton is not built for long-term carry. And your body. She paused, struggling to breathe. Your body is already failing. Aaron's jaw tightened. I've walked farther, he said. That is not the same, she replied, panic rising in her voice. Your muscles will tear. Your heart will overheat. Your bones will crack under the strain. She reached up weakly and pressed her hand against his chest plate. Leave me, she begged. This is the logical choice. One life instead of 2. Aaron finally looked directly at her, even through the helmet. She could feel his focus. No, he said. The word was quiet. Final. Cerise's eyes widened. You don't understand, she said desperately. My people accept death. We are taught not to fight it when it arrives. Aaron shifted his stance, pain shooting through his leg as the suit protested. Humans don't do that, he replied. The ground shook slightly beneath them as unstable gravity rippled across the moon. Aaron staggered but did not fall. Cerise cried out. Stop, you will die here. He took a step forward. The suit's system screamed warnings. Load limit. Exceeded motor strain. CRITIL. Aaron ignored them. Another step. Cerise began to cry, not loudly, but in quiet, broken breaths. This is meaningless, she said. No one will praise you. No record will remember this. Aaron's voice was rough now, but steady. I'm not doing this for praise. A sharp pain tore through his shoulder as a joint locked. He adjusted his hold, cradling her more carefully, as if she were made of glass. Then why? She asked. Aaron didn't answer right away. He looked down at the alien medic in his arms, someone who had treated wounded humans without hesitation. Someone who had stayed behind while others fled. Because, he said softly, you asked me to save lives. Cerise's breath caught, and I don't stop halfway. He began walking. Behind them lay death. Ahead of them lay uncertainty, pain, and almost certain failure. But the human walked anyway, and for the first time in her life, Cerise realized something terrifying and beautiful. Humans did not measure survival the same way the galaxy did. The moon's ground shook beneath Aaron's boots as he walked. Every step was agony, but he didn't stop. The exoskeleton groaned like a wounded animal, warning him that it might collapse under the strain. Sparks flickered across the metal joints, and the suit's internal displays flashed red. Cerise rested against his chest, fragile and trembling, her glowing eyes barely open. Her breaths came shallow and uneven, the life inside her slipping away faster than the distance they could cover. She tried to speak, but only a soft moan escaped her lips. "You can't keep this up," she whispered finally, voice breaking. 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers. You'll die before we reach the station." Aaron ignored her. He tightened his grip, cradling her like she was made of the finest crystal, so delicate yet so precious. He could feel her heartbeat through the exoskeleton sensors, slow, weak, fading. And still, he kept moving. "Humans measure strength differently," he said, voice rough from exhaustion and pain. "We measure it by how far we will go for someone who cannot go on without us." Cerise tried to pull away slightly, panic in her gaze. "But you are suffering. Look at yourself. Your blood, your muscles, everything. You are dying for me." "I will manage," he said softly, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Pain is temporary. Leaving you would be forever." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, only broken by the harsh hiss of the exoskeleton and the crunch of broken metal beneath his feet. Then Cerise shivered violently, her body too weak to control the tremor. Aaron adjusted his grip again, holding her closer. The exoskeleton whined as it struggled to carry both of them, but he didn't care. Not anymore. Every movement sent jolts of pain through his shoulders and spine. Every step was a gamble against his own endurance. But humans were stubborn. Humans refused to give up. As night fell over Kar Seth, the temperature plummeted. Alien moons rarely had such cold nights, but this one did, biting into exposed armor vents, freezing any part of skin not completely covered. Cerise's body shook uncontrollably. Her silver-blue skin turned paler, her breaths ragged. "Please," she begged, barely able to form words. "You must leave me. I'll freeze to death anyway. Your survival is more important." Aaron set her down gently against a piece of rubble, careful not to jar her broken bones. He tore open his emergency thermal pack and wrapped it around her fragile frame. The heat seeped through, warming her just enough to prevent immediate collapse. "You're burning yourself out," Cerise whispered, looking at him with glowing eyes that were half fear, half awe. "Your body, the exoskeleton, it will break. You must rest." He crouched beside her, straining against the pain in his legs. "I've walked farther. I've carried heavier. And I've never stopped for anyone before. Not like this. Not for someone who needs me." Cerise tried to speak again, but the words faltered. She had fought death countless times in her life, but never had she seen someone willingly face it, not for logic, not for honor, not for gain, but purely for another being. You are not like the humans I studied," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You feel too much. And yet you do not stop. You carry hope in your arms like it weighs nothing, though it must weigh everything." Aaron smiled faintly, though his teeth were clenched against the pain. Hope is heavier than metal, sometimes, but stronger than fear. Hours passed. The moon's surface was littered with wreckage and ash, every step more difficult than the last. Aaron's muscles burned, his joints screamed, his body ached in ways he hadn't known were possible. Yet still he carried her. Still he moved forward. Cerise drifted in and out of consciousness, her trust in him growing despite herself. The fear in her eyes began to soften, replaced with a fragile glimmer of hope. Even if her body failed, even if this was a foolish, impossible act, the human beside her refused to surrender. And for the first time in her life, Cerise understood something profound. Humans were not weak. Humans were not fragile. Humans carried more than their own bodies. They carried the courage to face impossible odds, the determination to defy inevitability, and the refusal to let life slip from the hands of someone they cared about. Aaron stood up again, his back screaming, his vision blurred by exhaustion. He lifted her higher, pressing her closer. "We keep moving," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his own body. "No matter how far, no matter how heavy. You survive or I do not survive either." And with that, he began walking again, every step a battle, every breath a victory, proving that humans could carry more than just bodies. They could carry hope itself. Even across the deadest moons in the galaxy. The first night on Karseth was colder than Aaron had expected. The moon's thin atmosphere offered no warmth, and the black dust that coated every surface reflected the faint light of distant stars like shards of glass. Each step he took sent jolts of pain through his body. The exoskeleton groaned with each movement, its joints burning with effort, and sparks flew from overloaded servos. Yet Aaron did not stop. Cerise trembled in his arms, shivering violently despite the emergency thermal pack wrapped around her. Her breaths were shallow, uneven, and ragged. "Human," she whispered, voice barely audible, "I am heavy. Your suit, it cannot handle this. You cannot continue. You will destroy yourself." Aaron tightened his hold, careful not to crush her fragile form, even as his own muscles screamed in protest. "Then we adjust," he said, gritting his teeth. "I can take more weight. We will move. One step at a time. I won't leave you. You don't understand," she said, panic creeping into her voice. "You are killing yourself. My life, it is fading. You should survive. You should go." Aaron looked down at her face, pale and streaked with dirt and blood. Her glowing eyes, half-lidded, met his with a mixture of fear and disbelief. And in that moment, he felt something unfamiliar in the silence of the moon, a weight heavier than her body, heavier than his exhaustion. It was hope. Fragile, almost impossible hope, clinging to life because he refused to let go. "Cerise," he said softly, voice shaking with fatigue, "you are not alone. Not now, not ever. If I leave you, then all of this, your courage, your care for others, it dies here. And I cannot let that happen." Her lips trembled, and she tried to speak, but the words faltered. She had faced death countless times in her training, but never had she met someone who refused logic, reason, and survival itself to protect another life. Humans, she realized, were different. Infuriatingly, stubbornly, beautifully different. Aaron took another step. His left knee screamed in pain. A servo in his exoskeleton sparked and hissed. A warning flashed across his visor, structural strain, critical. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Every second counted. Every step kept her alive. Hours passed. Darkness enveloped the ruined battlefield. The once gleaming ships lay shattered, smoking like dying comets. Alien corpses littered the ground, silent witnesses to the humans' determination. Aaron adjusted his grip, shifting her weight slightly to prevent further injury. Even as his own body threatened to fail, Cerise drifted in and out of consciousness. She muttered fragments of words in her alien language, half prayers, half apologies. Aaron held her tighter. "Don't sleep too long," he whispered. "Every moment you rest, every second I carry you counts. We keep moving." The cold bit deeper, and Aaron's armor began to frost at the edges. His fingers inside the gloves were numb. His legs felt like lead. The exoskeleton servos began to fail one by one. A shoulder joint locked. Sparks flew from the left leg motor. Pain coursed through his body, white-hot and relentless. And still, he moved forward. "You're insane," Cerise whispered weakly, her head resting on his chest. This is madness. Your life, it is slipping." Aaron smiled faintly, teeth gritted, lips cracked from exhaustion. Maybe, but humanity. Humans fight when all hope seems lost. That's what we do. That's who we are. The moon's surface stretched endlessly in front of them. Every step felt like climbing a mountain, each movement more agonizing than the last. But with each agonizing step, Cerise's breaths grew steadier. Her eyes, still weak, shimmered with something she had never expected: trust. Hours melted into one another. Aaron's suit was failing completely now. A left servo had burnt out entirely, and the remaining motors protested with every motion. Sweat and blood mixed on his forehead. His muscles screamed, his joints ached. He could barely see through the cracks forming in his visor. Yet he pressed forward, holding Cerise as if she were the only thing in the universe that mattered. And for the first time, Cerise felt something she had never experienced: safety. Not from technology, not from armor, not from the battlefield, but from this human. Against logic, against reason, against death itself, he carried her. Not because he had to, not because anyone demanded it, but because he chose to. Aaron's voice, low and steady despite the pain, cut through the cold darkness. You survive. I survive. That's the rule. That's how it works for humans. I don't leave anyone behind. And with that, he took another step, the exoskeleton whining. His muscles burning, every nerve screaming, but his heart steadfast. Because humans, he knew, were stronger than any metal, faster than any machine, and braver than any fear, and he would prove it, one painful, impossible step at a time. By the time dawn crept across the shattered horizon, Aaron's body ached as if the universe itself were punishing him. His muscles trembled violently with every step, and the exoskeleton groaned like a living creature in agony. Sparks flew from overloaded joints. Warning lights flashed incessantly across his visor. Motor strain, critical, battery 42%. Structural integrity, failing. Yet he did not stop. Cerise was quieter now, but her breaths were shallower. Her head rested against Aaron's chest, her silver blue skin faintly glowing in the dim light of Karseth's twin moons. She looked at him with a mix of fear, gratitude, and disbelief. Human. She whispered, "Why? Why are you doing this? You are breaking yourself for me. I cannot accept this." Aaron adjusted his grip, careful not to worsen her injuries. Each movement sent jagged pain through his shoulders and back, but his eyes remained steady on the horizon. "Because," he said softly, "humans measure strength not by what we lift, but by what we refuse to leave behind." Cerise shook her head weakly. "You're lying to yourself. Your body cannot handle this. Your exoskeleton cannot handle this. You will collapse. And then both of us will die." He did not flinch. Every step was agony, every movement a gamble, but the human in him refused to yield. "Then we will collapse together," he said quietly. "But not before I try. Not before you survive." The battlefield stretched endlessly before them, littered with twisted metal, smoking wrecks, and the lifeless bodies of soldiers from both sides. Every step Aaron took felt heavier than the last, the ground beneath him unstable, the gravity shifting without warning. He staggered once, almost losing balance, but he tightened his hold on Cerise. She did not fall. "Not once, human." "You are insane," she said, voice breaking. "No one would do this. Not even your own kind. Why? Why carry me like this? Why risk everything?" Aaron's teeth clenched as pain shot through his spine. A servo in his right shoulder exploded, sending a shower of sparks into the dust. His exoskeleton groaned like it was crying. But still he moved forward. "Because," he said, voice steady despite the agony, "some lives are worth more than fear. Worth more than survival. Worth more than logic. Yours is one of them." Cerise closed her eyes, her tears mixing with the blood and dust on her face. I don't understand humans, she admitted, her voice barely audible. You feel everything. Every pain, every fear, every hope. And yet you fight anyway. Aaron's steps faltered as his legs shook uncontrollably. His back felt as if it had been crushed by the weight of the entire battlefield. The exoskeleton's battery warning flashed red. Battery, 19%. Smoke hissed from a joint in the left leg. His muscles screamed, but he refused to kneel. He refused to let go. You're stronger than your suit, Cerise whispered. Stronger than anything I've ever seen. You carry, not just me, but hope itself. A faint smile touched Aaron's lips despite the pain. Hope, he said, voice ragged, is heavier than metal, but stronger than fear. By midday, the exoskeleton began failing catastrophically. A knee joint locked completely. The left arm servo quit, leaving him unable to adjust his grip easily. Each movement sent shockwaves of pain through his body. Yet still he moved. Every agonizing step brought them closer to the medical station, closer to life. Cerise began to cry quietly, pressing her face against his chest. I thought I would die, she admitted. And yet, here I am, alive. Because of you. Aaron's voice shook with exhaustion. No, he whispered. Not because of me. Because humans never leave those who cannot survive on their own. That is what makes us strong. Not our weapons. Not our armor. Our will. Ours blurred into one another. Aaron's vision was hazy, the world around him spinning in waves of exhaustion and pain. Yet the human in him pressed on. Every inch he moved across the blasted landscape was a testament, not to his strength, but to his refusal to surrender. And Cerise, for the first time, truly understood. Humans were not fragile. Humans were not weak. Humans carried more than their own bodies. Humans carried courage, hope, and determination into void. Even when the universe itself seemed determined to crush them, Aaron stumbled again. Muscles screaming, exoskeleton joints failing. Yet he whispered, almost there. Just a little further. We survived together. And even on the brink of collapse, he carried her forward. Because humans, he knew, refused to leave anyone behind. Not for reason. Not for logic. Not even for death itself. The third night on Karseth was merciless. Darkness swallowed the broken battlefield, broken only by the dim glow of distant stars and the faint sparks flying from Aaron's failing exoskeleton. The temperature had dropped to near freezing, and the thin atmosphere offered no warmth. Every breath Aaron took felt like inhaling shards of ice. Cerise lay against him, shivering violently, her fragile body nearly giving in to the cold. Her silver-blue skin glimmered faintly, but the glow was weak, her life nearly spent. Human, she whispered, voice cracking, I am slipping away. Please leave me. You cannot survive this. You must. Aaron's muscles screamed in protest with every movement. His legs felt like they were filled with stone. His back ached as though it had been shattered and stitched back together incorrectly. Sparks flew from the exoskeleton's left arm, joints hissed with friction, and warnings flashed across his visor. Motor failure, critical. Battery, 7%. Structural integrity, imminent. He ignored them. He could feel the life in Cerise faltering with each labored breath, and he refused to give in. He tightened his grip, pressing her close. No, he said firmly, though his own voice trembled. I am not leaving. Not now, not ever. We survive, together. Cerise pressed weakly against his chest, tears streaking her face, mixing with blood and dust. You will die, human. One cannot allow it. I don't measure strength by survival alone, Aaron whispered, teeth clenched against the pain. I measure it by how far I will go to protect someone who cannot survive without me. That is strength. That is human. Every step was agony. Every movement threatened to shatter the failing exoskeleton completely. One leg motor locked. Sparks flew across his visor. His vision blurred, sweat and blood mixing on his face. The pain was unbearable, yet he took another step. And another. Cerise's breathing grew fainter. Her voice was barely a whisper now. You are not supposed to do this. No one is. I never believed humans could be this strong. Aaron's lips curved into a faint, painful smile. We are strongest when we choose to carry hope, even when it weighs more than anything we can bear. The exoskeleton gave one final violent groan. Motors failed, joints locked, sparks sprayed like fireflies in the darkness. Aaron could feel the structure collapsing beneath him. Yet he refused to drop her. Using every ounce of human strength, he shifted the suit, dragging it partially on his back while holding Cerise against his chest. Pain tore through his body, white-hot and consuming. But he refused to surrender. They stumbled across jagged terrain, broken metal and bodies scattered beneath them. Every inch forward was a battle against gravity, exhaustion, and the moon's unstable surface. Every step threatened death, but Aaron pressed on, human. Cerise whispered, her voice faint, barely audible. You carry more than a body. You carry life. And hope. Aaron stopped for only a second, holding her close, feeling her warmth against his freezing armor. Hope is heavier than any weight, he said. Stronger than any fear. And it survives because humans refuse to leave it behind. Cerise's eyes, dim and trembling, filled with tears of awe and disbelief. She realized, as she never had before, that humans were not defined by their armor or weapons. Humans were defined by their refusal to surrender, their courage to defy odds, their ability to carry what no one else would even attempt. Hours blurred. Aaron's body shook violently. His muscles threatened to fail entirely. His exoskeleton was no longer functioning as a support. It was a burden he carried along with her. Yet he did not stop. He refused to let her die while he still breathed. By the early hours of dawn, faint lights appeared on the horizon, the medical station. Rescue signals, weak but visible. Aaron's heart surged with renewed strength. He took another step. And another. Cerise stirred weakly, her glowing eyes meeting his. Human. She whispered, voice trembling. I thought I would die. And yet, you. Aaron smiled faintly, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. No one survives alone, he said softly. Not when humans are willing to carry them through the impossible. With one final grueling effort, he dragged himself and Cerise across the last meters of broken terrain. Every joint screamed. Every muscle burned. Every breath was a battle. And yet he did not falter. The human carried her through death itself and came out alive, because humans were not just flesh and blood. Humans were courage, determination, and unbreakable will. Humans carried hope, even when everything else was lost. And on Karseth, in the freezing darkness of a battlefield that should have swallowed them both, Aaron proved it. The first rays of the twin moons reflected off the broken metal of Karseth's battlefield, casting long shadows across the ruined landscape. Aaron's body was trembling violently, every muscle screaming in protest. His exoskeleton was little more than twisted metal now, wires exposed, sparks flickering like dying stars. Yet he still held Cerise in his arms, her fragile body pressed against his chest. From the horizon, faint lights appeared, rescue ships. The sensors in Aaron's suit picked up their signals, faint and weak, but alive. For the first time in 3 days, he allowed himself a small, shaky smile. Not because he had survived, but because she had. Cerise stirred slightly, her glowing eyes meeting his. She had been unconscious for hours, drifting between sleep and the edge of death. Now she blinked slowly, recognition dawning in her eyes. Human, you carried me. All this time? Her voice was barely audible, trembling with awe and disbelief. Aaron nodded, sweat and blood dripping into his eyes. Every step, he whispered. Every second. Humans don't leave those behind who cannot move on their own. Cerise tried to speak again, but her strength failed her. She could only press her head closer to his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her. That simple rhythm, human and relentless, had carried her across death itself. The rescue team arrived, their hovering ship sending beams of light across the battlefield. They froze for a moment, staring at the scene before them. A human barely alive, battered, his exoskeleton ruined, stood amid the wreckage. And in his arms was an alien medic, a live dot. It was impossible. No human should have survived this. No human should have carried another life through 3 days of death and despair. And yet, there he stood. One of the rescue officers spoke into the "Commander, you need to see this." Video drones recorded everything. The images spread across the galaxy almost immediately. Militaries, scientists, philosophers, politicians, no one could look away. A human, exhausted beyond measure, carrying a fragile alien life across a battlefield that would have killed any other species. Back on the moon, Aaron collapsed to one knee. Cerise clung to him, weak but alive. Her tears fell onto his battered armor. I was wrong," she whispered. "I thought humans were weak. I thought we were stronger, but you are stronger than I imagined." Aaron smiled faintly. Pain lanced through his spine, through every joint in his ruined exoskeleton, but he nodded. Strength isn't measured by size or armor or speed. Strength is measured by how far you will go for another life. The rescue team carefully lifted them both, placing them aboard the nearest ship. Medics rushed to treat Cerise's injuries, stabilizing her heart and body. Aaron was next, his own injuries ignored at first because he refused to stop speaking. "She survives because I carried her," he said. "She survives because humans refuse to leave anyone behind." Cerise, barely conscious, smiled through her pain. "And you survived because you carried hope," she whispered. "Not metal, not weapons, hope." When the footage reached the larger galactic networks, their reaction was immediate. Human soldiers were studied. Commanders called it impossible endurance. Alien philosophers debated whether it could be done naturally. Scientists tried to calculate the limits of human physiology and failed. And everywhere, humans quietly nodded. Because they already knew the truth. Humans were strongest not because of their weapons, not because of their armor, not because of their training, but because of their will. Aaron spent weeks in recovery. Doctors marveled that he had survived, even as they patched up his broken bones and crushed muscles. Cerise recovered alongside him. Slowly, the alien who had once begged him to leave now held his hand, trust and gratitude shining in her glowing eyes. The galaxy never forgot what happened on Karseth. Every cadet who studied human tactics learned the story. Every alien who mocked human emotion reconsidered it. Every human who heard it remembered. Courage is not measured in physical strength. It is measured in the refusal to surrender when everything seems lost. And somewhere, on a distant moon filled with smoke, ruin, and death, a human soldier had proven what no statistic, no calculation, and no weapon could ever measure: that humans, when they choose to protect, are unstoppable. Cerise looked at Aaron one last time before leaving the ship. Her voice was quiet but full of awe. "You changed my understanding of life, human. You carried me across death and made me believe again." Aaron nodded, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "We carry hope," he said simply. "That is what humans do." And for the first time, Cerise truly understood. The galaxy might judge humans as fragile, emotional, reckless, but humans were capable of the impossible. Humans were capable of carrying life itself, through darkness, through despair. Humans were capable of carrying hope. And hope, she realized, could not be stopped. The galaxy had watched. Videos, sensors, eyewitness reports, they all told the same impossible story. A human soldier had carried an alien medic through 3 days of death on a broken moon. The exoskeleton that should have supported him had failed. His body had burned, his muscles shredded, his joints screaming with every step. And yet he had not stopped. Cerise of Veln had survived. Against all odds. Because a human refused to let her die. Months later, as she walked beside Aaron on a quiet human colony station, the memory of those 3 days burned in her mind. She could still feel the weight of his arms, the warmth of his heart, and the strength in his will. She had begged him to leave her. She had pleaded with him to save himself instead. And he had refused. "You carried me," she whispered softly, her voice still trembling. "You carried me across death itself. I don't know how to repay that." Aaron smiled faintly, though pain still lingered in his movements. His armor was repaired, but the memory of shattered joints and sparks flashing in the darkness remained. "You don't repay it," he said. "You live. That's enough. Humans carry life because it matters, not because they want thanks." Cerise shook her head. "Your people, they are incredible. I thought humans were weak. I thought you ran from impossible odds. I thought logic meant everything. But you—" She trailed off, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "You are something else entirely." Aaron looked away, Embar.